my life.
What was the best part of your experience as a whole?
Well, after I did get injured, and our forces were at that time mostly advancing slowly. So I was fortunate that our support forces could come with, call them jeeps, up front close enough, under some fire, but fairly safe because of our strong Air Force. Mm-hmm. And going back across, backwards direction, across the Roar River and looking up and seeing the conflict in the skies as I was going back. Mm-hmm. And so thankful for the men who were flying at that time for our armed forces. Mm-hmm. We were doing a pretty good job handling them in check.
What was the hardest part, you would say, of the military lifestyle for you to adjust to? What was the hardest part of the military lifestyle for you to adjust to?
What was the hardest?
Yeah, if it was hard for you to adjust to.
Well, the hardest part was sort of the unknown, going into conflict and not always seeing the enemy who was shooting at us. And I was fortunate to have such a good officer and got to know what we were trying to do and what we had to do. Yeah.
What was the easiest part of the military lifestyle for you to adjust to?
Oh, I was so happy after I was hurt, wounded, knowing that I was still okay, even though I had some injuries, and there was a good chance I would see my family again.
Do you remember the day your service ended and where you were?
I think it ended after I was on a hospital ship going back to United States. Mm-hmm. And what a wonderful scene coming into New York Harbor. I think I cried.
When you got back home to your family and community, how were you received?
Actually, I was not too free to travel yet. There were a good number of older veterans who were taken into the service before me, who had priority on release for good reason. And I was actually stationed, this was after the conflict, I believe it was in Vancouver, Washington, and had been there for, I think, a few weeks, and was able to communicate with my family up in Pierce County.
Mm-hmm.
And they came down to see me. And that was such a good experience. Yeah.
How did you, after your service ended, how did you transition to civilian life?
To civilian life?
Mm-hmm.
I was looking forward to it because at the time they had what was called a GI support, well, GI Bill, and was privileged to actually visit the campus where I was interested in going to school. Mm-hmm. Going to school was a real deep desire, and getting some training for civilian life. I actually attended and graduated from WSU. Yeah. In engineering, by the way. Yeah.
So then you became an engineer afterwards? And then...
Yes, indeed. I worked for a little bit for Bonneville Power, and then Tacoma City Light, and then Boeing. Yes.
How do you think your military service changed you or affected your life?
Well, it affected me physically a little bit, but not enough so that it was obvious. Like I said, I had injuries in my legs, but I gradually accumulated enough balance and ability to, well, eventually to run a little bit.
Did, obviously you continued your friendship with your officer above you, but did you continue any other friendships that you made during the service afterwards?
Well, yes. I remember some friends that, well, we were able somehow to communicate and were close enough in civilian life to travel a little bit together. I remember actually going up to Canada and taking a long train ride, which was very interesting, and my friend had some connections in Canada, family connections, where we stopped overnight with his family friends, yeah. It was a good friend for me because of that, yeah.
How has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
About war? Well, I felt very good about the reason we were fighting. Mm-hmm. And it was not difficult, not too difficult to overcome, because I felt good about it. Mm-hmm. I put it behind me, and like I say, they gave us the GI Bill, mm-hmm. and I made full use of it. Yeah, I got my training under the GI Bill.
What would you like people to know or remember from your story?
Well, I didn't want to hide anything to my family, but I seldom talk about it outside of my family. Mm-hmm. So your question was?
I was saying, what would you like people to remember from your story?
His experiences. From his experiences.
Well, I felt the military was very good for veterans. And coming from a big family, I never expected to have the opportunity to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And the GI Bill was just a wonderful blessing for this guy. Being number 5 in 8 children, you know, I had very little hope as a teenager of my folks supporting me through college, but the military took care of that.
Can you tell me a little bit about your college years?
My college years? A little bit, and it was, I was part of kind of a collegiate Christian fellowship, they called it, a Christian group who helped me reconnect with my faith and friends in that area, and I was very blessed through those connections to continue with some of them. I'm not sure what else to say, but I did continue contact with them for some time.
And I can see you're still a WSU fan.
Oh, yes, thank you.
What message would you like to leave for future generations?
What message?
If you have any.
Above all, keep your faith and trust in the Lord for His leading, and don't let me get in the way.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to this for the interview? Any stories, any past memories you'd like to talk about?
Well, I suppose they are deep in there someplace, but I'd have to have somebody pick and choose the questions, but otherwise I'm not too inclined.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk about your time of service.
Thank you for coming to ask questions. That's special.
Thank you so much.